In 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition in the Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia, seeking to conquer the remote peak known as Kholat Syakhl, or Dead Mountain. The group, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, consisted of seasoned outdoorsmen and women, university students who had earned the highest certification in mountaineering. But what began as an adventurous trek into the frozen wilderness ended in one of the most baffling and terrifying mysteries of the 20th century. Known today as the Dyatlov Pass incident, the deaths of these hikers have sparked a wide range of explanations, each one more unsettling than the last. Initially, the official investigation concluded that the hikers had died from a compelling natural force. Their tent was found ripped open from the inside, as though the group had fled in a frantic rush. Dressed in only their undergarments, they ran barefoot into the freezing night, with temperatures dropping below -30 degrees Celsius. Over the weeks that followed, their bodies were discovered scattered across the mountainside. Some had died from hypothermia, but others had sustained horrific injuries, including skull fractures and broken ribs. One hiker's tongue and eyes were missing, yet there were no signs of an external struggle, no tracks of other humans or animals in the snow, leaving investigators and the world to wonder, what really happened at Dyatlov Pass? The official explanation never satisfied those who delved deeper into the case. From the beginning, there were elements that simply didn't add up. How could experienced hikers, who were trained to survive harsh conditions, panic to the point of fleeing their tent half-dressed into a deadly cold night? What could have caused the severe injuries on some of the bodies, which medical experts compared to those sustained in a high-speed car crash? And why were traces of radiation found on their clothing? These are the questions that have led many to believe that something far more sinister happened on that frozen mountain in 1959. One of the earliest theories to gain traction was the involvement of Soviet military testing. The Ural Mountains, especially in the late 1950s, were remote and largely inaccessible, making them a prime location for secret military activities. Some researchers believe that the hikers may have inadvertently stumbled upon a classified military test, perhaps the testing of a new weapon or aircraft. In support of this theory, there were reports of strange lights in the sky on the night of the hikers' deaths. Witnesses from a nearby village claimed to have seen glowing orbs hovering over the mountains, which some suggest could have been parachute mines or experimental military aircraft. The orbs might have been flares or even some kind of advanced military technology that the Soviet government was testing in the remote wilderness, far from prying eyes. The injuries sustained by the hikers, particularly the massive internal trauma without external wounds, are consistent with the effects of a shockwave, which could have been caused by the detonation of such experimental devices. The theory goes that the military was testing these weapons in the area, and the hikers, either accidentally or intentionally, found themselves in the middle of it. Fearing the discovery of their secret operations, the military may have been quick to cover up any evidence of their involvement. The radiation found on some of the hikers' clothing could also point to exposure to military technology, possibly involving radioactive materials. What if the military intentionally obfuscated the cause of death to prevent the exposure of their covert activities? The Soviet government was notorious for its secrecy, and any potential witnesses or victims of classified military experiments would likely have been silenced, either through fear or force. Another chilling theory suggests that the hikers may have encountered an extraterrestrial presence on the mountain. The bright glowing orbs reported in the sky that night lend credence to this idea. These orbs, sometimes described as orange spheres, are a recurring element in numerous UFO sightings around the world. What if these hikers were in the wrong place at the wrong time, stumbling upon an extraterrestrial event or being? There have been accounts throughout history of humans having traumatic encounters with otherworldly beings, encounters that sometimes leave physical scars or cause psychological distress. The severe injuries suffered by some of the hikers, along with the apparent panic that caused them to flee their tent, could point to an interaction with something beyond human comprehension. Many UFO encounters are known for causing radiation burns and other unexplained physical effects, which could explain the trace amounts of radiation found on the hikers' clothing. Some believe the hikers could have been caught in the path of a UFO or alien craft, and that the craft's energy field or propulsion system might have caused the injuries that led to their deaths. The missing tongue and eyes of Lyudmila Dubinina, one of the hikers, is another element that fuels this theory. Mutilation in UFO cases, particularly of cattle and humans, has been a noted phenomenon. often involving precise removal of organs without the presence of blood or external injury. Were the Dyatlov hikers victims of an alien encounter? Their deaths the result of an advanced, non-terrestrial technology we cannot even begin to understand. But some suggest that the true horror on Dead Mountain may not have been extraterrestrial, but rather interdimensional. There are those who believe the group might have encountered a portal or rift, a gateway to another realm, where the laws of nature are different from our own. Such portals are theorized to exist in remote, desolate areas around the globe, places where strange magnetic fields or energy anomalies are frequently recorded. Perhaps the Dyatlov Pass area is one such location. The panic that overtook the group could have been induced by exposure to some sort of interdimensional force, a reality shift that caused them to tear out of their tent and flee into the night, disoriented and unable to perceive the physical world as they knew it. In this scenario, the hikers may have encountered creatures or entities from another dimension, beings that do not exist within the same physical constraints as we do. These beings could have inflicted the terrifying injuries found on the bodies without leaving a trace of their presence in our dimension. The disorientation that drove the hikers to flee could have been a result of their minds being overwhelmed by the exposure to this alternate reality. The idea of portals or dimensional rifts is not as far-fetched as it might seem. There are reports from various cultures, both ancient and modern, of people vanishing into thin air, only to reappear miles away or never return at all. Could Dead Mountain be one such place where the veil between worlds is particularly thin? Another deeply unsettling theory ties the Dyatlov Pass incident to the paranormal, suggesting the group might have encountered a malevolent force, perhaps even a demonic presence. Some speculate that the area is cursed or haunted, a site of ancient rituals or dark energy. There are legends from the indigenous Mansi people, who have long inhabited the Ural region, that speak of dangerous spirits inhabiting the mountains. The name Kholat itself translates to Dead Mountain, which may indicate that the area has long been known as a place of death and mystery. According to this theory, the hikers may have disturbed something ancient and malevolent that caused their sudden panic and eventual deaths. The Bible warns of spiritual forces that exist in the physical world, demonic entities that can influence and torment humans. Ephesians 6:12 speaks of the battle not being against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, authorities, and powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Could the hikers have encountered something demonic that night? Something that sought to terrorize and destroy them? The missing tongue and eyes could be seen as part of a ritualistic or symbolic mutilation, consistent with demonic activity throughout history. The irrational behavior that led the hikers to flee into the deadly cold may have been induced by supernatural fear, the kind that grips the soul and leaves no room for reason or logic. In the Bible, demons are often described as chaotic and destructive forces, sowing confusion and despair among humans. Perhaps the group, in their final moments, faced such a force, one that defies explanation by modern science. There is also the theory that mind control experiments or some kind of psychological warfare could have been at play. During the 1950s, the Soviet Union, along with other world powers, was deeply invested in researching psychotronic weapons, which aimed to control human behavior through electromagnetic fields or other forms of energy. It's possible that the hikers fell victim to a classified experiment that went terribly wrong. The intense fear and panic that caused them to flee their tent may have been induced by mind-altering waves or frequencies being tested in the area. The fact that the military became involved in the investigation so quickly, and that files related to the case remained classified for decades, adds weight to the theory that something more than just a tragic accident occurred. But for all the theories, whether they involve military cover-ups, extraterrestrial beings, interdimensional portals, or malevolent spirits, one thing is clear: there was something deeply wrong with what happened to those 9 hikers. Their deaths were not simply the result of poor decision-making or natural forces. The fear that gripped them, the injuries they sustained, and the eerie, unexplained details all point to the involvement of forces that transcend human understanding. From a biblical perspective, the Dyatlov Pass incident could be viewed as a manifestation of the ancient struggle between good and evil that has existed since the dawn of time. The Bible is full of accounts of angels and demons, entities that can manipulate the physical world, cause fear, and even lead people to their deaths. In Matthew 8:28-34, we see how demons can drive men into chaos, causing them to act irrationally and violently. Could it be that the hikers encountered such a force on Dead Mountain? Were they the victims of a spiritual battle, one that claimed their lives in a way that modern science cannot explain? In the end, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains shrouded in mystery. But if you look closely, the signs are there. An ancient struggle, forces beyond our control, and a world where unseen powers still exert their influence. What happened on that frozen night in 1959 may be part of a larger, darker story, one that echoes the ancient tales of demonic influence and spiritual warfare, where human lives hang in the balance and the forces of light and darkness wage their eternal battle.